Hi, and welcome to the Mavericks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Saroy, and this is the place to be to get unstuck, unleash your superpowers, and create a world that works for all. On this podcast, we speak to Mavericks who inspire us, and we aim to get the insight and wisdom from their story to give you the clarity, courage, conviction that you need to make your mark on the world. Our guest this week is author, speaker, and life coach Bryan Falchuk. Bryan went from obese and depressed to running marathons, and he's faced nearly losing his wife while his young son watched. He transformed his life using his do-a-day philosophy, which has enabled him to lose 100 pounds, run marathons, become a best-selling author and write for Inc. magazine, as well as becoming a TEDx speaker. Bryan's also become a C-level exec at a major finance company. What I really love about Bryan is his realness and his compassion. There really aren't many senior execs you hear talking about self-love, service, and helping people. He's a really big-hearted guy with a huge message about how you can truly transform your life. And so with that, let's get to it.
So hi Mavericks, it's Chris here again, and this week we have a very special guest all the way from the USA, Mr. Bryan Falchuk, author of Do a Day and a man with a really kind of quite inspirational transformation story. So hi Bryan, welcome and thank you for being with us this morning.
Hey Chris, thanks for having me on.
It's great to talk to you, and I've been reading about your story, and I think there's a lot of good stuff here. So the first place I always start, Bryan, is I just ask every guest, what does the word maverick mean to you? To us, it's kind of an authentic, true-hearted person, kind of unleashing their superpowers and doing their bit for the world. But what does that word mean for you?
Yeah, I love that. You know, in the US context, there's a political joke that evolved around the word maverick, and Saturday Night Live had their fun with the word. So I'm gonna set all of that aside because there's definitely connotations there for me as well, or memories at least. But I think the way you're describing it is more beautiful and purposeful than my first inclination in the word, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just different. As I'm thinking about trailblazing. And it's someone who, there's a path. And I think this is so crucial to what I work on is we all just sort of live mindlessly. Like we just trudge through our day to day like automatons. And a maverick is the one who raises their head up, and breaks from that to blaze a path of purpose. And that, like in today's world, that's being very much a maverick, because that is not the way most people live their lives, or society reinforces our lives to be lived.
Right. Couldn't agree with you more. And that's the thing. That's why we chose the word mavericks. It's that following that authentic kind of call of the heart, as it were. Yeah. So great. So based on that definition, I mean, from what I know of your story, that moniker definitely applies to you, as it were. So why don't you just to give us a way in, why don't you kind of give us a top line of your story, as it were?
Yeah. So, my story, unfortunately for speed, goes way, way back. It's just, I was a little kid, 5-6 years old. My parents got divorced. I was one of four. And, getting caught in that situation, I lost what most kids really need. And that's the sense that everything's going to be okay. And my parents were too caught up with the divorce and, 3 other kids in the household. So I sort of got lost in the fray. And that emotional stability, that emotional need, because I'm still so young, that just wasn't being met. And, I'm not blaming anyone for that. That's sort of a casualty of war, if you will. So I had to look somewhere else, because I certainly was nowhere near emotionally mature enough to handle it myself. So I turned to food, because it's always there. It wasn't arguing. It wasn't moving out. It never questioned me or any of that. And it felt good. The problem is, food is not a cure for emotional distress. Like, I've done that research. It doesn't work.
Right.
And if that's why you're eating, as soon as you're done eating, the whole impetus to eat is still there, because food doesn't actually do anything for it. So you need to eat again. And people are like, was it a fast and furious thing, or was it kind of like bit by bit every year you put on a few pounds? And I mean, it was like, you look at a picture of me, there's this picture I have in my mind when I was 4 years old. And I'm this like smiley, skinny little kid. I mean, the smile on my face, I don't recognize it. And then you look at a picture of me when I was 6, and it's like I'm busting out of my clothes. I'm not quite Augustus Gloop kind of round, but I was big and I would eat everything in sight. And so I got up to about 100 pounds overweight. So like I everyone talks about wanting to be at your high school weight, or for the UK, your college weight. Yeah. I'm at the weight I was when I entered 5th grade when I was 10.
Wow.
So,
okay.
that's that transformation. I lost weight when I was a teenager, but I never dealt with why I was obese. And so like a lot of people, I put the weight back on because I was consumed by anxiety and I was depressed. And I just, I got educated on exercise and eating better. So I had the tools, but I never dealt with the reason. And that haunted me through, most of my early adult life.
Sure.
And put me on that path of kind of mindlessness and going nowhere.
Right. So here you are in early adulthood, kind of having some tools, maybe kind of have lost some weight, kind of gained weight from a very early age. So that obviously isn't where you are now, as it were.
No.
So what happened then?
So it took me a forcing moment to break free. So I got married in my 20s. My wife and I had a kid. He was born like right around when I turned 30, a couple months later. And then fast forward to when I was 32, I had gotten up to 222 pounds. So I was about 45 pounds overweight. At the time, I believed I should be somewhere around 180.
Okay.
And I have no idea in stones or kilograms what that is, but it's a lot. Like it's too much. You know how I describe it is I looked obese as a kid. I didn't look obese anymore. I just looked like an American. Like we're all kind of, chronically a bit overweight and unhealthy. So no one noticed me anymore. Whereas growing up, I was like, oh, look at that fat kid. It was like I stood out and I got judged for it. But now I just looked like everyone else. So it was sort of like a more morbidity problem, not a mortality problem.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so this moment in 2011, my wife became very seriously sick. Our son was 2, I was 32. I weighed 222. There's a theme of 2s here. So she has a chronic illness we didn't know about that it had reared its head now and then throughout her life. And it was just sort of these inexplicable 24 to 48 hour episodes of extreme pain and fevers and chills, and no one could ever explain it. So they're always like, oh, you caught a bug, you get a 24-hour flu, and by the time she could get into the hospital to be seen, it had sort of already passed. So there was really nothing to diagnose anymore.
Yep.
And they're just like, it just keeps hitting you. Sorry. So she got one of these episodes, it didn't pass. And it just every day, I took a day off from work thinking like she just needs to get through this day and then she'll be okay. And she was a stay-at-home mom taking care of our son. So I stayed home. But day after day, it just didn't pass. And it not only didn't pass, it got worse. And that it's not like it started lightly and built. It starts pretty severe. So for it to get worse it's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah.
So she starts losing a tremendous amount of weight. She dropped down to just about 100 pounds, basically couldn't get out of bed, couldn't really take any food or keep it down. And her doctor called me on June 30th to say, I'm going on vacation for 6 weeks. Yeah, we really don't know what this is. Don't really know what to do about it, but let's check in when I'm back. And I just said, doctor, she's losing 2 pounds a day. She barely weighs 100 pounds and she can't get out of bed. She will not be here when you're back. And he just kind of flippantly said, oh, okay, we'll take her to the emergency room if you need to. And he hung up.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I walked back into our bedroom. My son is there looking at his mother in pain in bed as she has been for days. Like he's watching all of this unfold.
Yeah.
And it just hit me. Like he turned and looked at me. And when I saw his eyes, I was just struck with this, like, what am I doing? And it's not like, I said, what am I doing here? And it's not like, why don't I split? Like, I don't need to deal with this. It wasn't that at all. It was like, I have a strong hand in the way this is going or the better that it's not going. So from my wife's perspective, I might be doing things like I'm making the food. I was able to work from home for a month to try to help get things stabilized and find someone to help full time. So I was there, but emotionally, I was so caught in the anxiety I had from my childhood and just, this is the way I am, is like, starting from that early age, my sense is everything's about to go wrong and it's going to hit me in the face. And as a little kid, I couldn't do anything about that. As an adult, I can. So I became the fixer. So it's like anything that smells like there's a hint of going wrong, I get kind of pissed off and I whirlwind into action. And so all of her, like, her pain, her suffering, it's triggering me really heavily. And I'm not an understanding person about it. I'm a like, get out of my way, stop it, and let me fix this kind of person, which is not great when you think you're dying.
No,
That's not supportive. So I'm failing her as a husband. I'm not giving her, like, she's fighting for her life, and I'm making her feel like she's a bother, making it worse. Stop it. You just need to do this, this, and this. Right. That's not like, that is not going to help her get through this.
No.
And for my son, mommy was there with me every day, and now she's not. And daddy's home, which is weird. Daddy's supposed to be at work during the day, and daddy, will you play with me? Daddy, will you read to me? Whatever he's looking to me for, because his mother's in bed.
Yeah.
And I'm too busy and angry. It's like, I can't read to you right now. I have to do this. I have to do that. And, this poor little boy, like, he, exactly as I did, he just wants to feel like everything's okay. And he doesn't understand what he's feeling. And I'm not giving him what he needs for his stability. Right. So I'm failing her. If I think what I went through as a little kid was definitional, losing your mother at 2 is way more definitional than that. And I'm failing him.
Of course.
Like, he has no chance at a happy life if he's only going to have one parent, and it's me. So that's not acceptable. And at the time I stopped there, but in retrospect, what I understand was also going on is this sense of, and I'm failing myself, because I actually shockingly deserve better than I was giving myself. And that's something at the time was really subconscious. Mm-hmm. I hadn't fully grasped that. It's like I had sort of resigned myself in this role of the angry fixer. Like, I wasn't living my life. I was working there.
Okay.
And, I felt like this is who I am. This is the cards I've been dealt. I just have to deal with it and get on with it. And actually, I don't want that. Like, okay, so things happen. That's called life. It's not all roses. So you can either choose a better path and choose to be more resilient and find a way out and recognize, like, if I'm the fixer, that means I can solve things. That's a good thing. I don't need to look at it as a problem all the time, but that's how I chose to. And it doesn't mean it's an easy choice. And some people get offended when I start using the word choice. Like, I didn't choose for this to happen. It's like, no, of course not. But consciously or subconsciously, you are choosing how you feel about it.
Absolutely. And how you're responding to it, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it doesn't take work or any of that. Yes to all of that. And you can still do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're still here today means you've done it every other time you've been faced with that, no matter how impossible all of those things felt. And I don't want to hear, well, this time's different. Look, my wife was about to die.
Yeah.
She is still alive today because we recognized we've gotten through every other challenge so far.
So let me ask you this then, Bryan, because this sounds like a real moment, and I find it with a lot of the people I've worked with, there's often that moment, isn't there? So here you are, your wife is extremely sick, your son is kind of going through this situation he doesn't understand, and you're in this place of fixing and kind of feeling resentful about that. And as you say, there is kind of this recognition that, the possibility of doing better for your wife, for yourself, and for your son. What was it that caused that shift in perception or consciousness that allowed you to see that and kind of make a different choice, as it were?
So I would love to say I was in this place of brilliance and I decided to be introspectful and thought about it, which is actually, that is how you can get there. For me, I got smacked in the face, and that I needed that wake-up call. But with the right help, I could have done it without the smack in the face. And obviously that would be preferential. But it was this, like, the gravity of what was about to happen. Because, I mean, in all honesty, the most likely reality was she would not be here in a month. And I would be a widower at an age where, it's one thing if I was 85, it's terrible, but that's what happens at that point in your life. One of you will lose the other one, not when you're 32 and you just had your first kid. Right. So that is not what I signed up for, what I expected, what I wanted, any of it. I'm about to be a single parent to this amazing, amazing little boy who deserves so much better. And I'm not a good role model for him. I'm not a good support for him. And I felt like not just that I was failing, but God, I want to do better for him. Like, my love for my son is so real. I want nothing more than his happiness, and I have the power to help him with that, and I'm not. And I wanted better for that. So that was really strong.
Right.
And I took those two feelings with me the next day, and subconsciously there is this like, and I want better for me, and I actually value myself enough. And through hindsight and being introspective, I pulled that piece of it out too. So those three things came together, and I felt it in my bones. I woke up the next morning, July 1st, and I was like, it's still there. And if anything, it's stronger. And I recognized, like, I get up really early. The world is at peace and still and quiet. And so I can spend some time with myself. And that's what I did. And I was like, look, this is a feeling you've never had before. Anytime you've had a strong feeling, you've let it pass you by and you've missed the opportunity. This feeling is different. And this opportunity, you can't let it go because there's too much at stake. So either watch it slip away and watch your life continue to crumble forever, or grab hold of the lifeline that this is and do something. And that was a very conscious recognition. And that's what I did. So there were very specific things that were first and foremost wrong in my life that I wanted better, that were 100% in my control. Like obviously my wife's health, that was a major thing, but that's not 100% in my control. I can help affect it, but I can't, that's not just like for me to fix myself. So I recognized three key things that were major blockers to anything I wished to achieve going forward, and would make a significant impact on my son's life because of the man that it would help me be. And that's where I took that purpose, that sense of true motivation I was feeling, and I pointed it at those three things very specifically, with specific goals, specific actions, and an intensity of execution that I had genuinely never used my entire life.
Okay.
And that was very different.
Okay. And what were those three areas?
So the first is my health situation. So, I had been working out, but very mindlessly. Like I get on the elliptical, cover the screen with a magazine, and in a half an hour it'd be beeping. Like I didn't even know I'd worked out, basically. I'm like, no more of that. It's intervals programs. You're watching the screen to know when to really kick it in. And I did that first morning. I plotted a course. I said, I'm 222. I weighed myself that morning. I want to get to 185 by the end of the year. So July 1st to December 31st. That's a considerable amount of weight, but it's not impossible. But it would take real work. This isn't lose 5 pounds, because that's not where my life should be. My life should be at a healthy, sustainable weight. That's what a goal is. Goal is not like the 5 pounds is great, but that's a step along the way. Set the true goal of where you want to take it. Now that can be really daunting. So like when I had 100 pounds to lose, there were years that I wouldn't start, because it's just, you look at it and it's like looking up at Mount Everest from the bottom and you have no shoes on. How do you do that? But the thing about climbing a mountain, you don't just step to the top. So it's a function of every single day you get up and you do what you need to do in pursuit of your goals. And that I can talk about some more, but that's essentially what Do a Day itself is. It's that execution path.
Great. And we will absolutely come back to that.
But that first was the health and the wellness. So I set my specific weight target and I didn't get there. So I didn't get to 185 at the end of the year. I actually got there by my 33rd birthday, which was in October. So I got there early, which I still can't believe I lost. Actually got a little bit. I think I was like 186 that morning. So, but essentially there, maybe if I had one less glass of water or something, whatever.
Sure. Absolutely. That's incredible. So.
And I'm not there right now. I got down to 180, which was where I really should have been by the end of the year. And I've basically sustained that since the end of 2011. I was 175 this morning. I'm always between 170 something and the very low 180s consistently. And actually, that's not something I do on purpose anymore. I have a lifestyle that naturally leads me to stay at a healthy weight, which is where I was trying to get to. I don't want to, like I always said, I live the first half of my life obese and the second half trying not to be. That's as miserable a way to describe your life. Like, what do you do for your life? Oh, I try not to be fat, and then exercise is a punishment and it's a tool instead of something. Like I've come to learn, I actually love exercise. I love running, which I never thought I would say, because I do it for the actual enjoyment of it. And the running is also like, that's my zen. I do a lot of thinking when I'm out running.
Right.
And then you can't do that if you're doing it to not be fat. That stands in the way of enjoyment. So I live a totally different life, and my weight is a complete non-issue today.
Amazing. So health, that was your first one, and that's handled, and that's been there for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
What were the other two areas?
I had been working at an amazing company that was becoming less amazing. The founder was running the show when I joined, and he was just a beautiful, inspiring person, and he had passed away. And the new regime was great, very talented, very capable management, but really different purpose. And the culture was shifting and becoming far more political. I'm just not cut that way. I really don't care to play those games.
Sure.
I think the good rises to the top unless the game players stand in the way. So
Agreed.
I was recognizing, it was still fairly early days, but I started to see like, okay, this is not ultimately where I need to be culturally. It's not healthy for me. So that was about taking some specific actions to start the process to have other opportunities. So about networking and starting to work on my resume and that sort of thing. And also there were some internal things. What can I do in that situation to protect myself from that sort of feeling? So, what sort of performance, what things can I engage in to help build the right sort of coalition so that I'm not, constantly in the midst of these games. And that was a longer term play. Also because of my home situation, I couldn't just quit. I was the only one working. So and we desperately needed the income and the health insurance. So it's not like, I could just tomorrow, like stand up, be bold and pave my own way. So that was a longer one. And the last was probably the most important, although at the time I felt like the weight loss was, that was finally doing something about this anxiety. And my wife had been begging me for years, and I had every excuse in the book of why I was too busy or, things at home. I couldn't just walk away and go, talk to someone for an hour. And now more than ever, but it was also so crucial more than ever. And so I talked to her about it, and she's like, thank God, you've needed to do this for the longest time. I know it's bad timing, but we'll find a way. If we need someone to come hang out for an hour, or, my sister lived nearby, we just found someone to help out with our son during the day. So it's like, if we need to pay them extra to stay at night, like whatever it is, you're not figuring out how to have 80 sessions with someone. You're just figuring out how to have this one.
Right.
And that relieves a lot of that weight of like, oh my God, how am I going to do this forever? How are we going to pay like 80 times $100 an hour or whatever it is? It's like, that's very big. That's the 100 pounds. We're not, I'm not having all those sessions and paying all those bills and taking all that time right now.
No, just the session in front of you, right?
Yeah, that's it. So those were the three key things. And that was the beginning of the transformation. I will say I've achieved a lot since then. And you could call them a lot of impossible goals, but actually, I was just saying this to someone the other day, they weren't even on the list for me to scratch off as impossible. I didn't even have them on the bucket list of like, oh, but that'll never happen. They weren't even in the realm of consideration to blow off as not being doable. Like running a marathon, no way. That wasn't even on the radar screen. Becoming vegan, I had no interest. I didn't think it was possible. I thought it's too hard and pointless. I'm a C-level executive at a competitor of that company from before. Here I was feeling like my career is doomed. I'm going to be trapped, and totally different situation, let alone like publishing a book, having it become a bestseller, writing for a major magazine. I just did a TED talk last week.
Amazing. Amazing.
None of this was even like, forget the radar screen. Like radar hadn't even been invented yet to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this obviously an incredible story here of like the shifts and, what you've just outlined, the things you've done. So, and what I hear is you use the metaphor earlier, climbing Mount Everest, like with no shoes on or standing at the bottom, as it were. So I know this kind of taking it one step at a time, as it were, is a very central philosophy to you. So,
yeah.
So your book is called Do a Day. So tell us a little bit about that and kind of what that has enabled you to do, as it were.
Yeah. So do a day, when you start from the place of self-love, that's a solid ground you begin in, because you need to believe that you deserve better, and you need to believe that you're capable of better. And as a society, we're not great at this. We get in competitions of who worked later last night, whose boss is worse, who has more stress at home or what, and the winner is the person who's more miserable. Like that's the societal norm. So that's an issue we have, and that's reinforced. And we don't take compliments. I always use the example, you go to someone's house for dinner and you're like, oh, thanks so much. It was delicious. Like, oh, the steak was overcooked.
Oh God, yeah. What is that?
It's just pronounced thank you. Like just, so I tell people stop the but. Like as soon as that word but forms in your mind when someone pays you a compliment, just stop. Just allow for that good to be out there. It's a little bit of change that starts to have a big effect on you when you compound it. So the first piece is self-love, and that's crucial. And actually, I missed the importance of it explicitly when I first published Do a Day. So it's just a year old now, and I've just released a revision. And that's a new chapter, is on self-love, because it's just so crucially important.
Absolutely.
So that's piece one. Then we get into that true motivation. For me, it was thrust upon me, but I try to help. I pose some questions that I want people to ask themselves to help bring it to the surface. And what I would say is, whatever answer you come up with to those questions is going to be wrong. And I don't mean it's completely wrong. I mean, it's too surface level. So you have to ask the questions, but then you have to dig deeper on each of the answers. So whatever you come up with, you have to ask why. For each answer, there's another deeper level answer beneath that you have to get down to. It's not, you need a new job that pays better because you want a bigger salary. Like that's material, that's stuff and things. That's not values. That's not going to drive your life. And what happens if the job is miserable, but it pays better? That's not sustainable. So why do you need to make more money? That's that first why. And then it's like, well, because, we're talking about having a family and we have this little 1-bedroom apartment and we can't raise a family in that. So why do you want to have a family? Well, I wanted to have this kind of life and I want the joy of children, like whatever it is, you start pushing bigger and bigger or deeper and deeper. And what started with financial gain is now talking about the value of yourself in relation to your children and your spouse. And like now we're starting to get deeper. We're talking about family.
Yes.
We're talking about creating something. And so you see the differences like from material to values. So push deeper. And there's a number of questions that I pose. The big one is, the sort of sum it up one is, what will you always care about no matter what? And whatever the answer is, dig. Just keep on digging, and it could take years, and that scares people. That's fine. It took me, I've discovered that level about me, not just about my wife and my son, 6 years after the event, and writing a book on it wasn't enough. That's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with growth and a journey. It's a beautiful thing to keep expanding.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we tend to fall into, even if we are people who set goals. It's like, it's about getting to that end point, but actually when you get to that end point, you've kind of continued to grow, haven't you? So that's why digging deeper that's the more constant thing, as it were.
Yeah. So, and your goal can have an end point, but your motivation can't. So I lost weight the first time because I didn't want kids in high school to think of me as the fat kid. And then I lost weight and I went to college and no one knew me. So my motivation was over. So guess what? I gained weight.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't there anymore to help counteract that anxiety and the depression that was causing me to be overweight to begin with. So you need something that's going to endure through time. Goals can be time bound. They should be. And that's the next piece, is those specific kind of goals. I gave the 3 examples that I faced, and then Do a Day is the execution against it. And it took a while to get to this point, but Do a Day is a mindful way to go about the day-to-day in pursuit of your goals. So the word day is probably, it's the starting place for it. It's the most important piece of it, is like every day it's only right now. Yet we bring with us all this pain from yesterday. We bring with us the pain of the hardships we experienced, the mistakes that we made that we regret, or maybe it's things we've lost that we're longing for. And all that negativity clouds today. And we make choices as a result of that. So if you had an argument with someone yesterday and now you're going to interact with them, you're not walking into that discussion or that interaction free and positive. And so guess what? You're probably going to be on edge. They're probably going to read that, and it's going to lead to a specific kind of outcome that isn't as good as if everyone had wiped the slate clean. Now, I'm not saying that's just forget everything. You need to talk about it. You need to work through it. But if you're carrying that anger and that judgment and that regret or whatever pain into today, it will affect your actions today. So you're missing out on your opportunity for a better today because of yesterday's pain.
Right.
And at the same time tomorrow. So we do, and this was my big thing, was the future anxiety. So we act today from this place of fear of what's going to go wrong later, what we're going to have to deal with, how much more we have to do, or it could even be a good thing. It could be anticipation of some great thing. That no one sleeps the night before their wedding. Now that could be fear, and it could be because you're so excited. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, you're giving up the present moment because of all of these emotions tied to what you believe will happen in the future, whether it's going to happen or not. And so whether it's because of yesterday or tomorrow, you end up throwing away today, which is actually all you have. Like, it's never yesterday and it's never tomorrow.
Right.
So when you can free yourself from those two things and you're in this present moment, then the first word comes in. It's a verb, do what you have to do in pursuit of your goals in this moment, free of what you did or didn't do, or how well or poorly you did it before, and how much more you're going to have to do tomorrow, or how hard it may or may not be, or what may happen or not happen as a result of it, or whether if you fail in those actions, what the result will be. None of that's happening. So just get on with it today and take that action for those goals. That is freeing, inspiring, and empowering if you allow it to be.
Right. But it sounds like the key to this is, as you say, it's that mindful piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of knowing, because we so often go into the past or the future without even being conscious of it.
Yeah, it is a very mindless way that we go about it, and those things are powerful. And those emotions and the baggage is deep rooted, so they will come back in if you're not actively thinking about right now. And you can recognize them. So someone gave me the analogy. It was actually my wife. She's like, picture yourself in Times Square, or some busy place where there's cars and people rushing by. You see the cars. It's not to say like, oh, there is no traffic. This like Zen fake sense of the world. No, like there are cars there, but you can watch them and they can go by. You don't have to step in front of them. So the cars of the future and the past, or the people, they're all moving around, and that's fine. But you can acknowledge their existence without, stepping in their way, letting them hit you. It's a different interaction with them.
Very much so. And it's the word that's kind of coming up for me is kind of cultivation. It's like, there's cultivating awareness, cultivating a mindset, cultivating a focus, if you like.
Yeah.
To almost, I remember it's one of the reasons I wanted to interview you was because food has always been one of my things. And I remember many years ago, probably 10 years ago, I did a 12-step program around food. And one of the big things there was keep it in the day, which is easier said than done, as it were. So for you, as you kind of were going through your journey to kind of deal with the anxiety, to lose the weight, to kind of shift your kind of career, as it were, how was it that you were able to literally do a day, as it were, when it got really challenging? How were you able to kind of stay in that mindset, as it were?
Yeah, a really big piece of it is that true motivation, because you're going to have to come back to that in those tough times. So that phrase, dig deep, this is what you're digging for. It's the thing that's going to get you back to center. So when I was, in the worst of it, or dealing with the most of it, is like just taking a moment to remember, why does any of this matter? And that's why your motivation has to be at that deepest level, because it's got to be so powerful that it can nearly bring you to tears, or if you're a crier, maybe it will. It's the thing that's going to get you, like snap you back on the course. Is like, yeah, this is what it's about. Because actually the body is much more capable than the mind allows it to be. So if you can switch the mind back on the path, your body will get there. The capability is there, but for your mind telling you it isn't. And that motivation can bring you back to it. So that's a really big piece of it. And the other is just the presence of mind to recognize when I'm spiraling because of tomorrow or yesterday. So just the other day, my wife and son were talking about a bunch of trips that they want to take. And I was feeling particularly caught financially, and that's not necessarily real or fake. Sometimes I'm like, but I have to earn all this money to pay for that. And I was starting to spiral, and it was a spiral around all of the hours I'm going to have to work, and the tough things I'm going to have to endure at work, and how much the trip is going to cost. And it's like, we're not going on these trips right now. We're not even booking them right now. Why am I worrying? Like, right. My son's a little kid. He's excited by it. Let him say what he wants to say about, like, wouldn't this be cool if we did this and that, and just leave it there. So I recognize it. I actually stepped away for a moment and I did a bit of meditation on these ideas to just bring myself back to center. Is like, hang on, you're spiraling. You're starting to feel discomfort for things that aren't actually happening. And who knows, maybe he'll go on a game show and win the trips. You never know. Like,
you never know, right?
Yeah. So there's no sense in worrying about it. He's very smart and he likes puzzles. You never know. Like it is all possible.
Absolutely.
So it's that presence, that presence of mind.
And what I love about that and the story you just told there, Bryan, is it's these things are these challenges, or we never quite get it handled, do we? It's not like, you're kind of I really get that you're not sitting from some mountaintop kind of espousing, keep it in the day and do a day and I've got it all sorted. I mean, it's a philosophy and a practice. It sounds like you continue to practice every day, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, you look at someone like the Dalai Lama, he meditates every day. He practices every day. He tells beautiful stories of his own humanness. And it's like, if you look at him, you look at the Pope or any of these supreme spiritual leaders, they have struggles too. They have thoughts that they need to work through. They're beautiful people, but it's very real. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, now I'm fine. That's not life. Life is not full of everything's perfect. It's not a question of that. So I absolutely have moments where I'm struggling or where I make tougher decisions or I'm not sure which way to go or how it will work out. And sometimes I'm not able to rein it back in and it gets the better of me for a period of time. But often, and it's a majority of the time that you're gunning for, you're not going to reach perfection and just be okay with that. Often I'm good enough to get through it.
And there's a really key point, right? The place we started was self-love, and that place of being good enough without being perfect is a really big part of that, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so I'm kind of curious, because you mentioned a little bit about meditation there and that kind of stuff, and you clearly have a lot going on, and I want to come to that in a second. But what kind of daily routines or practices or habits do you use that kind of keep you focused and motivated?
Yeah, so I do try to meditate, or I do meditate. I don't try to. I do meditate on a daily basis. I try to get in at least 10 minutes, but there's some days where, for whatever reason, it's less. But I make sure I at least take even just a minute to just set my intention for the day and tie it back to that core motivation. So what are the big goal-related things, not the little tasks of life's got a lot of little to-dos that don't necessarily have anything to do with anything, or so you think. I think about the big things that I have and just bring myself back to how does that fit in with ultimately where I'm trying to get to. And, so like this interview is one of the things this morning. I'm like, okay, this is one of the key things I have today in terms of what I'm trying to achieve with this work. And what do I want to make sure comes across? What do I want to make sure my mindset is at, so that I'm as effective and can help as many people who are listening as possible. So it's bringing that centering back to it and mindfulness back to it. And what can I do before we start that interview to help get me in the right place? And when I catch things that I'm really struggling to see the connection, that's a sign to me that maybe that's not something that I should be engaging in, because I do have a lot going on. And I can usually tell, look, this just isn't sitting right with me. Something about this feels like it's not really tied to my path. And I don't have the time. I shouldn't make the time for things that pull me off of it, because there's a cost to that. Nothing is free. There's an energy suck. There's a time suck. Even if it just means I could sit in bed and do nothing, but feel a bit of relaxation. There's probably more value in that than doing something that actually takes me away from the path. This always struck me in businesses as this term, creating value, adding value. The opposite of it, I always thought was just not adding value. It's not. It's actually destroying value, which sounds so extreme, but it's true. We have fixed resources, whether it's our time, our energy, our passions, our money, whatever it is. So if you're not putting that towards adding a value, you're inherently destroying value, because you're not going after the actual opportunity. And that, when you have that realization, there's this, a friend of mine did a podcast with this friend of his. This guy, Dr. Kayvon K out in Canada, who has this brilliant way of putting it. He's like, it's kind of like Yoda There's no try or try not. It's only
Right.
do. So he was like, there's no like, there's only love or hate. And if you don't want to say hate, you can just say don't love. And you should only do what you love. Because if it's in the middle, it's taking away from your ability to do what you love. And that feels a little bit utopian because I don't love paying my bills, but I do love having a home. I do love having a safe place for my wife and son and me. And, you know, so it's like, okay, now I see the connection back to it. So while I may not love that action, I love what the action facilitates. And so that makes the list. And when you apply that filter, it is extreme, but it's extreme on purpose because otherwise we end up in this mindless, like just handling the whirlwind of crap that's thrown at you every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want there are a couple of places I could go here, but I want to cover both as it were. In that place of doing the stuff that you love, I mean, the thing that, you know, that comes back to the maverick kind of doing what authentically and true-heartedly pulls them, as it were. But sometimes the thing that gets in the way is, you know, we want to, for some of us, you know, we want to please other people, or we want to make sure that other people aren't negatively impacted. There's that kind of, we assume a negative impact on other people.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering kind of what your thoughts would be around that kind of thing and reframing it maybe, or finding a different path.
Yeah. So, you know, the idea of do no harm, I think you should always try to do things in a way that don't hurt others. And I think actually that's often people's intention, even when you think that they're out to harm you. What they're trying to do is achieve whatever they're looking to achieve, whatever they want. And you may be a casualty in that process. But when you recognize that they didn't wake up today and like, the only thing I want is to hurt that person. Like it may be to win the argument or to have their, you know, their side of the story accepted or whatever, but it's not. You getting harmed is more likely than not an outcome of that. Now, it doesn't mean you have to like it or anything, but when you recognize they're just seeking to be happy, that can change the way you interpret it. And I have an example of, and I struggle giving this because I don't want people to think just seek me out on the highway and cut me off, but I got cut off on the highway. This guy cut in front of me, pretty unsafe. Not great, but I actually laughed. Whereas, you know, maybe a few years ago, I would have stuck up a particular finger on one of my hands and maybe started yelling. Or worse yet, struggled to get in front of him just to teach him a lesson, like even possible. I laughed because it was like, look, this guy's he was in a commercial van with like a plumbing business. I'm like, he's either trying to get to a job, you know, maybe someone's, you know, their pipes have backed up and they've got like sewage in their home. Like he's either trying to get somewhere that's so important to him that he should drive unsafely to try to get there, or he just wants to get home, or, you know, wherever he's trying to get, it's that important to him that being one car further up was worth it.
Wow.
So, you know what? I'm not in that kind of rush. That's okay. He's not like, I'm going to cut this guy off today because that's what I'm trying to achieve. He's like, oh, I got to get there. Ooh, I can sneak in front of this guy.
Right,
you know?
right.
His intention is different from the reactionary way I would have felt about it before. So if you recognize that, it's a lot easier to appreciate other people's actions or not be so hurt by it. And then you don't seek to harm them as much, or you may be more willing to find another path that is less likely to cause that harm.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I can just imagine you kind of sitting and laughing at that. Whereas I can imagine how a lot of people would feel about that. So what an amazing thing. So, so one of the things you were talking about there was, you know, what people are trying to achieve. And you're now in a place where you're a marathon runner, a C-level exec in a major company. You've written a book. You act as a coach and a speaker. So where are you going with this work? And what is it you're trying to achieve?
Yeah. The whole reason why I do this is to try to help people change their lives. Not me, but, you know, if I can help them along that way. I've had an amazing mentor who helped me. And he's like, you're the one who made the change. You were walking through the desert, trying to do better, trying to get to your goal. I gave you some water along the way, but it was you. So I want to be that to people. Even if I did full-time 24/7 coaching, I wouldn't affect as many lives as I wish I could, because more is better. I don't care about the selling of the book and all that. Like, if your message is real and you're having an impact, all that follows. So my intention is just to help as many people as I possibly can, because I know it works. and I know it has an impact. So that's where I'm heading with this. And I know that's an amorphous non-answer, but at the same time, like whatever path that looks like, that's what I want to achieve. If I could be doing this full time in any way, shape, or form, having the broadest impact possible, that's ultimately where I want to go. And what does that mean for my day job? What does that mean for anything else? I don't know. And I'm not bothered by it, because if I'm, meant to be on stages around the world speaking to people, and that's how I'm going to have the impact, beautiful. I want to pursue that. If I'm meant to be, just doing podcasts and putting out a book every few years, like I'm working on my next one, which should have been out already, but it's a time commitment.
Real life, right?
Yeah,
Real life.
But I'm not judging myself. Self-love.
Absolutely right.
Then that's what it means. I'm not bothered by it. I'm incredibly blessed. I do have an absolutely amazing day job. And if that's how I spend the rest of my days, that's fine. That's good. And if it's not how I continue to do things because I'm able to do this, this whole do a day thing full time, beautiful. Then that's what it means. So I'm not bothered by it, but whatever it is, I want to know that this message is out there, it's having an impact. And the best part of it is when I get pretty much every day I've heard from someone who's been inspired by it. That's what I want. Like that's the payback for it.
Love it. I absolutely love that. And what I really, it's funny, you said, it's a bit of an amorphous blob of a non-answer or whatever. And actually I would say it's a very good answer. Because I think, one of the things I see with people that I work with, and, it's been true of my journey as well, is that often we don't know exactly how it's going to unfold.
That's right.
We're just following an intuition or an energy or whatever else that is. And as you say, doing what we do each day, but we can't control the outcome, right?
Yeah.
So
Chris,
I love that.
I would say, I have specific things I want to achieve in this journey. And I had 2 things on a vision board that a mentor asked me to put together. One was doing a TED Talk, and I've done one. I have another one this summer. So, that's great. And I will continue that. It's not like it's done and I don't care now. I love doing it. I want to keep doing it because that's a great way to spread the inspiration. The other is to sit across from Oprah in the woods on her show. Now, I assume she's having some sort of phone trouble because I haven't heard from her yet. But when I put that out there, some people laughed. And what I was talking to a group I work with last night, and I was saying, one thing you need to keep in mind is if you don't put it out there, if you want something with someone, if you want a connection and you don't ask them, that's the only way to guarantee you will never have it. So people can laugh at me for saying that if they want, but look, I'm not on her show now. So I have absolutely nothing to lose by putting that out there. If I don't put it out there, if I don't take the steps to try to make it happen, then I will guarantee I don't have it. So that's a big part of how I've gone about this. Whether it's being on show, like writing for Inc. magazine, I wasn't writing for them before. All I had to do was ask, and worst case scenario, nothing changes and I continue to not be writing for them.
Right.
But taking that chance paid off. Putting the book out, if no one bought it, but my mother probably would, that was a safe bet. But if no one but my mother and me bought it, that's fine, because I got something out of writing it. But I have no shot of changing anyone's life if I don't write it.
Great. Absolutely. Absolutely right. So just a last couple of questions, just to kind of bring this in, as it were. If you were offering some wisdom to a maverick just starting out, or even someone kind of partway, say, through their career or their life, but wanting to make change, what wisdom would you give them?
Yeah, so to me, it's 2 really key, building block questions. The first is the self-love bit, and almost everybody is struggling with that, even the most positive people in the world. So reflect on that, put more time into it, and recognize those little places where you're beating it down. And don't just use humility as an excuse or the desire not to be seen as egotistical. I define egotistical really specifically. It's not someone who accepts compliments or has nice thoughts about themselves. It's someone who outwardly praises themselves for things that they aren't doing. And that's a different being than someone says thank you for something and you push back, or compliments you on your haircut or the work that you did or the speech you gave or whatever it is, and dismissing their enjoyment of what you've put out there. That's not being egotistical. So stop using humility and social grace as an excuse for putting yourself down or not allowing the positivity. So that literally, if you can't do that, and everyone can, it's whether you choose to allow it.
Mm.
If you stand in the way of self-love, the rest of everything that we talked about for the past hour is completely meaningless, because you won't get there if you don't allow it to be. So that's, as I say, like, you'll never have it with that attitude.
Yeah.
So that is like, please just spend some time on that. And the other is figure out your true motivation. Even if you think you have it, press on that why. Really start to get down deeper into it and find out, like, what are the absolute must-haves that you always care about in your life, and focus on those and use those as your guide in what you should actually engage in and how you should engage in it. Get those two things together, and the goals and the execution, keep that mindful execution. You will start to realize, like, just how much you can achieve. And I always say success leads to more success. Like, wins lead to wins. The more you do better, then you'll start having all these achievements that, as I said, at the opener, weren't even on the list to consider impossible.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. So, final question, and this is the one I always close with. And that question is, what is the one question that I haven't asked you that you would have liked to have been asked? And what is your answer to that?
Oh, I could give you another non-answer, because I really feel like I don't look back and be like, oh, he never said this, or I wish I'd said that. It's a genuine conversation. And I think we talked about what we needed to talk about. It's the same way someone asked me how the TED Talk went, and if I had any regrets. It's like, I said everything I wanted to say. I didn't say anything I didn't want to say. Everything can go differently, but that doesn't mean it should. So if we left something out, I'm not feeling it, because I think this was really genuine. I think we got to the heart of it. And I hope it was, in a real manner that people take away a bit of inspiration that they're willing to pursue. So I don't have anything that I would regret. I know I should have like some standard plug.
No. Sometimes people are like, yeah, I want to be asked. And some people are like, you know what? We're good. And so it's just a good one. So just on that last thing then, where can people find out about you?
Yeah, so there's two websites. If you can figure out how to spell my name, then you can go to bryanfalchuk.com, and everything's there. If you can't figure out how to spell my name, we've mentioned my book. It's called Do a Day. Go to doadaybook.com. So it's do a day and it's a book.com. Everything, you can get to everything I do from either of those, but Do a Day book, you can get the book there. It's literally on every bookseller. It's on Amazon, US, UK, globally, Kindle, print. It's on iTunes, all that. But yeah, you don't have to worry about how to find it. Just go to doadaybook.com and you can find everything there, including I'm really active on Twitter. It's one of the joys of writing for a magazine is you have to keep pushing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and I'm at Bryan Falchuk, but again, you got to learn how to spell my name if you want to do that. So there's just an easy link there.
We'll have it all in the show notes, spelt properly,
as
opposed to my my diary invite, as it were. And I just have to say, I think I read Do a Day in literally a matter of hours. I bought it on Kindle, and I literally was reading it on my iPhone. I was reading it on my Kindle as I was traveling, and it's actually one of the few kind of self-help books that for me was an absolute page turner. And I took a lot from, so it was an amazing book. So I totally recommend it to
And that's the point. It should be, I want it to be a faster read, because I don't want you to spend time with my words. I want you to spend time with yours. So get a bit of inspiration and then start doing a day for yourself. That's where the time gets put in, not reading about my story.
Love it. So thank you so much, Bryan, for spending time with us today and for giving us your wisdom and just your beautiful insights. And Mavericks, I hope you've got a lot from this, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye now.
Hey, listen up. Don't go yet. Did you get something meaningful out of this episode? Well, the most meaningful thing that you can do right now is to go and leave a review on iTunes, because those reviews are what keep us here. And please make sure to share and to subscribe to this podcast. Finally, are you unleashing your superpowers? Well, if so, show us on Instagram with the hashtag Mavericks Unlimited, and we'll see you over there. And with that, thanks so much for listening to the Mavericks Unlimited podcast at mavericksunlimited.com. Bye for now.